My name is Amol Nirgudkar. I'm the CEO of Patient Prism, and I'm delighted to welcome one of my good friends, Dr. Lori Noga, from Tranquility Dental Wellness, to our Zoom studios this afternoon. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
And Lori has been also a client of ours at Patient Prism. And I was always, when I first heard you, Lori, you were speaking at one of the DEO events, I believe, and I was instantly excited about your background, from your military background. You were called lieutenant, and you served the country. Then you became a dentist, and you've developed this incredible model called Tranquility Dental Wellness, which kind of provides a Ritz-Carlton type of experience, I think, or even higher, to dental patients. And you've been, very inspirational to a lot of people, not just women, but to all people in the dental world, on how you've kind of gone through the process of running your operations. By the way, she's also an actuary, which is one of the hardest things to be. So with that in mind, I'm really delighted to ask you questions around this comeback that you have engineered over the last 3 months from this COVID pandemic. I know the state of Washington was one of the first hit in the country, and you guys shut down a lot earlier than most of the country, and now things are coming back. So right off the bat, how are you doing? I think you've been open over 3 weeks now. Give us some stats.
Sure. Yes, we just hit 1 month. We reopened May 18th, so we're just about a month in. Overall, we are up almost 40% year over year from 2019. So as of today, this morning, I checked numbers. So what we've produced and what we're scheduled to finish June doing, it's about 40% growth over last year. Exciting. And looking into July, we're already scheduled at 75% of what we did in 2019.
That is fascinating. I mean, the growth almost seems unreal, right? Because you're like,
yeah.
And we always knew that there was going to be pent-up demand, but not to this extent. And the fact that you already scheduled for July makes me feel that, and this is not a temporary bump of June. And a lot of practices are wondering about this, right? As June they expected, because they started, everybody wanted an appointment. What happens in July and August, it remains to be seen. But the fact that you're 75% booked on June 23rd, it means that you should be overbooked by the time July comes around.
Right. Provided everything stays going the way it's going. I think there's still some uncertainty as to how long this is going to last and how much backlog was there. But this isn't just backlog for us. We're also seeing lots of new patients coming in, lots of emergencies, definitely a shift in mindset on the patient perspective as far as importance in oral health now, and then urgency.
Now, obviously, the 40% month to month and 10% overall doesn't just happen because you got lucky, right? It happened because you made some changes in terms of your capacity, in terms of your communication with your patients. Tell us about some of the changes. Tell us about communication, because that's something that we're super interested in.
Sure. Communication's changed quite a bit. Definitely it's increased because patients are asking questions around what are the precautions we're taking, is it safe to come in? So we've had a lot more conversations around that, which has caused us to change some of the scripting and the dialogue that we're using with them. We've definitely seen an influx, like I said, of just patients calling in wanting appointments. So having more scripting around the urgency and how important it is to get in and keep those appointments, because now we're booking so far out. And then in the chair, we've changed some of our conversations with patients around, hey, look what's going on in the world. This is a serious pandemic and everything starts with your mouth. So we want to make sure that you have a healthy foundation, and that starts here.
At Patient Prism, we keep talking about communication a lot, and we've seen, obviously, we've analyzed over 200,000 phone calls, and the practices that are doing well, including yours, are the ones that have their people ready to answer all the questions related to safety, related to infection control, PPE, and really, it's really about instilling trust in the patient, right? At the end of the day, right? Can your
Absolutely.
patients trust you, whether it's on the phone or in the chair? And I think it looks like you guys have really taken some proactive steps during the pandemic to calibrate those communications in a way that makes patients believe that, hey, I need to make this appointment and I need to accept this treatment because I need to take care of my health. And I think that's that empowerment mentality that you have instilled within your patients for sure is driving those results.
Yeah. And for sure, when we were closed down, that was one of my big focuses was how are we going to communicate this to build the trust? Because I knew it was all going to be relying on trust once we reopened.
Right.
And so, you know, we have a patient avatar that I teach my team, and that helps us understand who is the person that we're serving. And so we went back and looked at that and said, what is our patient avatar going to be asking? What are their concerns going to be? And then how can we pivot to make sure we're answering those questions and building that trust back up with them? And we started communicating it before we opened. We were sending out emails, posting on Facebook, you know, updated website, but even still there was a conversation coming through on the calls. So
Right.
that was just an extra layer of communicating to them and helping build trust.
It's interesting, right? I mean, in marketing, we talk about buyer personas, and the avatar is the same thing, right? You understand
Mhm.
who your buyer is. Your buyer in this case is a patient, and you want to make sure you understand all their, everything that kind of affects them. Right now, safety is on top of mind. Uh, Cost is always on top of mind in
Mhm.
terms of buyers. Fear is always on top of mind. So in order, when you do these avatars, you kind of really you're building that buyer's persona, and you're addressing every little thing that could affect that buyer, or that could prevent them from moving forward in that journey for achieving optimal oral health. Uh,
Yep.
and it's great. I mean, these are great lessons to be learned for any business, let alone dentistry, because once you understand your customer and what they want, it's easy to figure out what communication needs to happen, whether it's on the phone or in the office. And,
Sure.
one of the things you remind me, the conversation we had last week in preparation for this was this, the pandemic and the effect it had on you as a leader.
Mhm.
And I was fascinated by it. I was literally did not expect you to say all these different things. And I'm like, oh my God, Lori, I've got to have you on the show to talk about how did you take this crisis and transform yourself into a better leader in your business.
Sure. I probably handled it initially like everyone else did. It was just shock.
Yeah.
And especially for us, we were first. So there was nobody to look to at that time and figure out how everybody else was reacting to it. Because in Seattle, in this area, we were the first to shut down.
Right.
So I didn't really have anybody to look to. But then looking at other leaders who've been through crises in the past was one way. And I immediately had to come to a place of there's two choices, right? You can either take the road of I'm just going to get so far into my head, depressed, and become immobilized by this, or I can look at this as an opportunity. And I chose the latter, and I just set that mindset. Once I finally kind of settled down and kind of got over the stress, I decided this is an opportunity. And who gets an opportunity to grow a business through a pandemic, right? That it's a once in a lifetime shot. And so I
Right.
thought I'm not going to waste this. This is a perfect reset. And I looked at it as just that. Like I feel like this is the great reset of my career. Hopefully, I don't have to do this again. But and that was the moment for me that it changed my whole mindset and changed everything, the way I was looking at everything.
Was there any influences, were influencers, authors, management gurus, anybody else that you kind of said, okay, I'm going to follow this path?
Well, I do have one coach that I work with. His name is Alex Sharfin, who has a podcast called the Momentum Podcast. And so he had been through several, recessions and crises in the past. And so he was listening to him talk and speak how he went through bankruptcy in the housing crisis and literally lost everything he had. And he was the one who really said, you have to get to a place where you can accept that this may end up there. You may end up with nothing coming out of this. And once you can reconcile that in your brain, then you can start to figure out, where am I going from here? And I did that. I did just that. I had to face that fear of this I've been building this forever, for my entire career since I've graduated and gotten out of the Navy. And I had to come to the place where I said I was accepting the fact that the future that I had been envisioning was no longer. But that was my opportunity to create a whole new future.
Right. This is interesting that you had a personal coach during this process, and it's so important for all of us, right? No matter where we are in our lives, to have somebody who can come in and look at our business, look at ourselves personally, professionally, and kind of provide that guidance. Sometimes that's all it needed. And I've always advocated coaching and seeking out coaching in my life. I've never had one, but I've always sought advice rather, from many, many people during the crisis as well, so that, I could learn from the resilience and that they had. No matter what happened, these guys were resilient. They were always optimistic, and that, that rubs off. It
For
rubs
sure.
off in a really good way, and you need that support system, especially during crises. Not just, not anytime, but during crisis, you need that. I know you did a lot to expand capacity, and as we talk to dental offices nationwide and DSOs, one of the big challenges is that there is a lot of demand, but supply is constrained because of capacity, right? Either we are restricted by the number of operatories we have, and there's nothing you can do to change that, except you could potentially, do something with the hours. And so obviously we cannot see the same volume of patients as we used to see, because there's restrictions on how many people can be in the room and all that stuff. So what did you do to really expand? Did you expand capacity in any way?
We
Since
did. We had no other option but to expand hours. And we've started adding Saturdays because we couldn't even fit them in to the expanded hours during the week. That was something we had even thought about before. Again, we went back to our patient avatar and knew that our patient avatar was one who was going to need flexibility and either early mornings or later evening appointments. And that was that's always been my model anyway, but we pushed that even further. It's been tough though, because it is hard to hire people right now.
right.
A lot of people aren't coming off of unemployment. I was fortunate. I had pretty much everybody come back. I had a couple of assistants. Out here it's really difficult. Even still, there's no options for childcare at this point. So we're still struggling with that. So there were a few that couldn't come back due to those reasons. But, the rest of my team just stepped up. And even during the shutdown, I was talking about, we've got to be flexible. This is the time to reinvent ourselves. We have to meet the patient's needs. We all just have to work together and start rowing in the same direction to accomplish that. So we're there. We've been hiring quite a bit, doing tons of interviewing now, because I don't want to burn the team out that I have. I want to continue to keep expanding. But
And
for us, that was key.
That's a great lesson to learn from this, is that a lot of people I hear say that, oh, I'm doing 90% with 2/3 of the team. Okay, well, that's great, because for a short period of time, people will go above and beyond and do this stuff. In the long run, you're going to burn them all out. So be mindful and intentional with your hiring strategy, and don't think that I can just do this with 2/3 my overhead. And that's very, very clairvoyant of you to think about this now, than worry about, oh my God, there's no more people available, and then I'm going to be restricted. You had said that you also, if you're not finding a hygienist, you're hiring doctors to obviously do some hygiene activities until you can find someone, or getting these doctors to kind of diagnose through hygiene their own patients to get them to get treatment done. Is that something that you're actively doing?
Yes. So currently, because our hygienist schedules are so full, we typically, our new patients come in through hygiene unless they're an emergency patient. But we have been pivoting, again, just trying to meet the needs of the patients and getting them in, even if it's just on the doctor column, to get an exam in and then bring them back in for the hygiene piece. But even the doctor columns are getting really full. So now I have been interviewing doctors. We need more capacity still. So I've been looking at doctors and discussing with them that they're going to participate in doing hygiene until we can actually onboard more hygienists.
Right.
And that's how I built my de novos. I've always done. That's always been my model.
That's interesting. That's my next question. Is what is your de novo model? And and obviously it's been difficult to acquire new practices because, everybody and their grandmother wants to buy a dental practice these days, right? I mean, you had a grandma somewhere. I'm sure I will meet a grandma one day in some place. It's like, Amol, you got a dental practice for me to buy? Because everybody wants to do that, and it's not easy. There is, 10 buyers for every seller. So you've done the de novo model. Tell me what benefits and why did you start in that process besides the fact that they were not available?
That would be the main reason. Yeah, when I got out of the Navy in 2010, the economy still wasn't great. And I wasn't from Washington State, so I really didn't have many connections out here. Even though I tried, I had been networking even while I was in the Navy with brokers and trying to get my foot in the door. When I got out to Washington State, there were no practices for sale, at least none that people were showing me. I couldn't even find an associate position. I had a really hard time finding a job. And I'm not one to just sit around and wait. So after some time, I was talking with a mentor of mine from dental school who had suggested I just start my own. And that idea had really, honestly, up till that point, had never even crossed my mind. But at that point, I was so bored and just wanted to do something. Did some demographics, looked around and figured out where I was going to put it, and did my first de novo with no intentions of ever growing beyond that. I thought I was just going to build my office and do dentistry and live my life happily after that. But so that's how I ended up starting out a de novo. And for me, it grew so quickly that it just seemed natural. It doesn't even register to me that people struggle with it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I think some of the bigger DSOs have figured that out, but it's not easy to have done it at your single location and then start the second location and third location level. What is it that made you succeed? I mean, was it marketing? Was it enough focus on marketing? Was it patient avatar with the patient experience? Or was it you figured out the whole patient journey and that's what made you successful? Is there any one thing that you could point out to that made you successful at launching a brand new de novo?
I don't know that there's one thing. It's definitely been an evolution, but I knew my patient before I even built the office. I designed the office around my patient avatar. I didn't call it a patient avatar at that time. I didn't even know what to call it. I just knew who I was marketing to. Built the office around that, created the whole experience around that. And then it took off. Within 2 months, I had over 100 new patients in my first de novo in a month. So it just took off like wildfire. But I also, being an actuary, I studied KPIs. I tracked KPIs from day one. So I think that was a big part of my success. Drove my team crazy because in dentistry, typically that isn't something that they're used to doing, especially if they don't come from a DSO or a bigger group. But it gave the team an opportunity to have some ownership. And I believe fully that by tracking data, it helped us significantly. Because I could see where I could look at data, I could look at a string of data and analyze it and determine these are the changes we need to make based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah, actuary is definitely, and I didn't go to actuary school. I became a CPA, but we certainly developed a knack of looking at numbers and hearing those numbers talk to you. I don't know whether you've ever felt that, but I look at a P&L and it's talking to me. It's kind of creepy, but
It
it's
tells a
like
story.
interesting.
It does. Yeah.
Interesting. You really, and it was not just about your labs or your stuff, but sometimes you wonder that just the percentage change in your people versus your revenues and your other things, and there's you kind of look at that puzzle and you say, okay, if this changed but this didn't change, but then your debt changed, but I don't see that reflected in your marketing. So where are you spending the money? Like, so all these different questions that come around in your head if you think like that. And I think you utilize your education in actuarial sciences to really figure out the meaning behind those numbers and what could make them change. Because again, at the end of the day, KPIs are only as good as the change that you can effect from them. And looks like you've done that quite successfully. Any other benefits from de novos? Like, is there besides the fact that you get to put you get to start from scratch? What kind of benefits do you get with your second and third one?
I think it's that I've done it already, so I have something to go off of, which makes it easier. And there isn't any restrictions. I'm marketing to the person I want to. I don't have. There's no change management involved in
Right.
a de
That's the
novo
big
versus an acquisition. And I've never done an acquisition, so I don't even know what that's like. I'm actually sort of afraid of it because I don't know how that would go.
You know, it's interesting because obviously then you get to make your own rules from the beginning. You don't have to change
Right.
behavior. You just get the people, fit them in your model, and that's how it is from day one. You know, versus you're acquiring a practice, they have built in their set of habits. It's going to take you 42 days with extreme effort of consistency and accountability to change those habits. And sometimes people never change, and it's hard to do that. But if you have a system in place, a playbook in place. So do you work off of playbooks? I'm assuming you do.
We do. And that's one of those evolutions that have happened over time. I didn't have a playbook from day one,
Okay.
but we've been building, I feel like I've been building playbooks for the entire duration of my career, actually. And I'm a high fact finder on the Colby, so I'm a perfectionist and I have a hard time saying it's good enough. So
Mm.
I have to have my team, rip those things away from me and take it.
Uh, At what point did you start developing standard operating procedures for your office? Was it the first office, second office, third office?
It was definitely in the first office,
Okay.
and it was probably pretty early on, actually, that I
Okay.
had my team start building those out.
And so did you have an intense focus on, did you measure things like customer satisfaction? Did you do an NPS? Did you ever look at
I've
Net
never done a
Promoter?
real NPS, but we've done surveys on
Okay.
patients. Yeah.
And from a marketing standpoint, you know, your brand new office, um, did you, you know, it's scary, right? Because you have no revenue in the beginning,
Hmm.
and all these consultants will tell you, oh, marketing should be 4%, and you have to spend like 50%, right?
Yes.
Because
Yep.
none of those ratios make any sense when you're de novo, right? How much everything should be because you have no revenue. So how
Mhm.
did you decide what your marketing budget should be, especially when you start a brand new office?
It was definitely trial and error on the first one. It was just putting stuff out there and then tracking and seeing what was working and determining ROI and then fine tuning from there. And marketing tactics have even evolved over the time since then. I mean, when I first opened my very first de novo, a mobile website was an add-on. It wasn't, it wasn't a given. So, I was doing a lot of paper mailers back then. So different than now, right? It's completely evolved. Now there's Facebook and there's all kinds of other avenues for marketing. So I feel like every time I'm opening a new office, I'm looking at my marketing strategy all over again and reinventing it basically. And same thing, looking at what's my ROI, where is it working, what's the messaging that's working, et cetera, et cetera.
You know, everything that you've done, obviously, given your background, has focused around measurement, right? And, you know, Peter Drucker said it perfectly: is that you can't really manage or improve what you don't measure.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important to manage all the different elements of your business and actively look at them on a daily, weekly basis, so that you know when things are going away from the normal, that you can come back immediately and pivot to the normal. We say that at Patient Prism a lot, is that understanding the metrics and measuring things that are important to your business on a daily basis and giving that feedback back to you quickly really allows you to, you know, make mistakes, but not make big mistakes, so that you cannot recover from them,
Right. Or you can recover faster. You can
or
make
you
a
can
change
recover fast.
quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, fail fast, recover faster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, but you know, it seems from our conversation, and this is probably my last question, is that you've really, you know, I don't see a lot of dentists in your category that you know, are able to transform themselves in such a meaningful way into this business leader that you have become, that a lot of people look up to in dentistry, in the DSO world. And you know, you've had the most unique experience. You went to um, the military, you worked with the Marines, you uh, did actuarial school, which is unique. And then now you are this, instead of just this person you would expect, right? I would expect Lori to be this person who is constantly in the books, doing everything, and kind of being in this little square, and you're far away from the square, you're far away from the box. So, tell me all the things that have made you the leader that you have become, and not stuck in that one box, which was actuary or clinician or dentist. What are all those things that kind of made you who you are?
I think it comes down to my whole purpose or passion in life is to live to my highest potential. I don't think I've always known to call it that, but even back when I was an actuary, I would leave my job at the end of the day and just didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. I didn't feel like I was making my mark on the world. And so I ended up leaving that job, and I've ever since I've always been in this constant quest for doing better than I did yesterday. Even if it's a small thing, I always want to be better or do better. And so I'm just driven. That's just who I am. It's just my nature. And I'm always searching for information or ways that I can develop myself and then have an impact on the rest of the people that are working around me in my life. And as I've grown, as a leader and a business owner through these years, it's come down to coaching. I've always had a coach. I believe that everyone should have a coach. And they've helped me mostly with self-awareness,
Right.
Understanding myself, and looking at, instead of looking at things as failure, looking at them as an opportunity. And so now I look at everything as, okay, this didn't go the way I wanted it to, or I thought it was going to, but what did I do and what can I do differently next time? And I make sure that I apply that. So, over the years, I've developed into a person where in the morning I sit down and I look at what's my intention for the day? Who am I going to be? How am I going to show up today? And what are the things that I need to make that happen? And if I didn't get it right, then I look back at yesterday and say, all right, well, what do I need to try tomorrow?
I would love to do these 10-minute meditations with you on all the things you go through to kind of get ready for a day, go through your day. And I mean meditations, not, Om meditations, but like, okay, here's how I get into the right mindset every morning. A lot of clinicians in the dental world struggle with that. They are so overwhelmed with all the fires that they have to put out. They're so overwhelmed with everything that's going around. So it's hard for them to work on the business because they're so busy, and they have bought themselves a nice job, which pays a good salary, but it really doesn't become a business because if you stop working, it really doesn't pay you anything. So one of the things that I admire about you a lot, and in the little time I've known you over the last year or two, is that not only you're interested in the acquisition of knowledge, but you actually implement that knowledge. And there's such a big difference between that, right? We all love to acquire stuff, and dentists especially. I know some of my best friends are dentists, right? They love to gather data. They love to go all these conferences. I'm like, oh, I learned all this stuff, come back. And then those things sit on the shelves gathering dust because they never implement those ideas into motion. Because maybe there is a fear of failure, maybe there's no time, whatever that might be, they get busy. And you've been able to do that so effectively, every idea, and you've not been afraid of failure. Like, okay, well, I failed, I learned, I move on. And I think that's the key, in my view, at least, from our conversations before and today, is that's the key to your success. Is you're not afraid of failure, you're not afraid to take help, you're getting the coaching needed, you learn, you have thirst for knowledge, you convert that knowledge into actual implementation, and you keep moving on. And I'm inspired. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
We would love to. I mean, I'm gonna uh, tell our audiences, so we're gonna do a lot more content with her, because I definitely feel Lori could provide a lot of guidance on small things like, okay, how do I start my morning routine, or how do I run my huddle, or how do I look at marketing ROI KPIs on around marketing. And we could do really these small Khan Academy type videos with you that kind of tell people exactly how you fixed a problem, because I think it would be a great service to this industry if they could learn from your successes and your failures, because nobody wants to make the same mistake that somebody else has made, and I think a lot of people would learn from you. So thank you so much for coming today. I truly enjoyed speaking with you, and every time I talk to you, I learn something new. So I can't wait to have you again. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.